and welcome to UWO Now. UWO Now is a place where we talk to the students, staff, and faculty and the alumni at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh about interesting and relevant topics. College can be a wonderful experience. It's a coming-of-age experience for many generations, from baby boomers to Gen Z. And while the nostalgia of the time on campus may have similarities across various age groups, there are some experiences that have to be different. For instance, safety on campus was never something I considered much when I was in college, and there are other things that we'll talk about as well. College is still a fun and enriching experience, but what do colleges and universities across America have to consider when shaping the environments and the services that they provide to students in college today? We'll talk about that and other things with Dr. Jasmine Buxton, who's the Associate Vice Chancellor and Dean of Students at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. We're so happy to have you here. Good to see you. Good to meet you.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Thanks for being a guest on UWO Now.
No problem. Thank you for asking me.
So that intro kind of set it up.
Mm-hmm.
How are things, even from when you were an undergrad, how are things different, do you think, for students now?
Sure. I think students definitely have a lot. They're bringing a lot more to campuses nowadays, right? If we could use the quote nowadays. I think students have always had issues related to who they are, who they're becoming, mental issues, all those types of things. But I think that they are more interested in having the conversation on campuses these days. And I think that that's important because we have been able to exercise or utilize a lot more resources. We've been able to implement a lot of more initiatives that allow for those types of conversations to occur. And so we are excited about the types of things we're able to offer students, and we're also excited about the types of students that are coming to us, but we also know they're coming with a lot of baggage, right? So when I was an undergrad and when I went to graduate school, we talked about students coming with this level of baggage. This beginnings of higher education was about in loco parentis, in place of the parent. And so we don't necessarily adhere to that particular model, but we are here to be as supportive as possible, right? To be a resource to them. And students just have a lot of things happening, the world around them. We think about the university as this insulated experience, and there's just no way to insulate students from what's happening across the country. And so we have become spaces where we continue to have conversations about things happening around the world. When we think about how activism started on campuses, right? We think about the women's movement, Chicano student movement, the Black student movement, all those things happened in the late 1960s on college campuses. And so we just kind of see this continuation of activism, this continuation of things that our students need, these continuation of important issues and how that dialogue has to continue on campus. I think where we are now, our campuses are able to kind of support those dialogues and that type of back and forth with students.
Now, in your role, how does that affect what you do and how you approach it and what you try to do for students, giving this understanding of what are some of the things that they're going through now that you and I didn't have to deal with, or maybe we had to deal with but didn't have that support system on a campus? Sure. How does that shape then the list of priorities for you as a dean of students?
Mm-hmm. So the dean of students role is it becomes this large portfolio of student support and student care. That's our primary responsibility, is advocacy, support, and care. And so what we do is that we make sure that our staff are well researched, well learned, are able to kind of know what our students need and be able to kind of provide that for them. Our responsibilities are also to build relationships across campus, right? To build relationships in the community so that we can, if there is something that we can't do for them in our office specifically, we can move them or we can ask the questions across campus and kind of figure out what it is they need to develop like a care plan for them. The Dean of Students, the portfolio is large in terms of advocacy, and its portfolio is large in terms of communication across campus. I think it's really important. I think these types of positions have always existed. I just think that where we are right now, my personal belief in this level of being able to include students in all conversation, to be able to help build their sense of belonging is really important to me. And so I think when we think about the Dean of Students role, we think about the things that we do in our offices as it relates to advocacy, care, and support. It's just important for students to know that we are available to them, that we have things for them to utilize, we have resources for them to utilize, and that we're always finding new ways in which to do that, right? And so they just have to come to our office, and that we are also out there in the streets, like, walking around campus, really trying to figure out what's best, putting up signs and different things like that, and really being available.
Because I was going to ask, if you got all these new initiatives, you got these new programs, new ways to address needs, how does a student know that those needs can be met, that those services exist? How do you reach out to those students?
Well, that's the thing about students. College students are innovative in that they communicate on multiple levels, right? So when I was in school, it was a flyer. We're on the copy machine, like we're cutting these things out, we're printing it up, and all those things. So there are still flyers, but we do. There's different table tents that we put in the student union. We have social media. We utilize Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. There's this new thing called Be Real that I just learned about recently where they kind of take these pictures that are kind of on the spot. They kind of looks like a timer. It's very interesting. But I think there's a lot of ways that our students communicate with each other. That's just that Generation Z, this Generation Zoomers, I think that's what they're called, or who they're called. I think that the ways they communicate is always changing. And so we have to kind of be at the forefront of that. I like to think that I look young, kind of. So I try to stay as hip and cool as possible with them, to really kind of keep in step and kind of really figure out what it is. But everything works, right? So it's signs, it's signage across campus, it's table tents, it's yard signs, it's big flyers, it's social media, it's word of mouth. And a lot of it is about building relationships. So when we think about belonging, we think about folks that we want to bring into certain spaces to have conversation. It's important for us to help students build relationships with each other. So if they come to our office, they're more likely to tell another student, well, I got this particular help, go see this person, right? Go talk to this person.
And that's how it was when I was in school.
Yeah.
You learn about the various programs and organizations and support from other students.
Right.
Typically, it's not like you go, even though it's there,
you
may not go to a website to look it up or anything like that. There may be some students who do that, but it is a lot of word of mouth. So tell me this, what is your path to UWO? How did you come to this? You're new in this position here. Tell us about who Dr. Buxton is and how you got to UWO.
Sure, absolutely. So my career started as most student affairs professionals in housing. I started as a hall director at a HBCU at a historically Black college in Ohio, Central State University. And then I went to graduate school at Indiana State and worked as a graduate assistant in fraternity and sorority life. And then I left and went to Ohio State. When I graduated, I didn't leave. I graduated. And I went to Ohio State and I worked in housing as well. And so I kind of just built my career through student leadership, programming, diversity, strategic planning, all those types of things. And so I was able to move from housing to cultural programming. So I worked in the Multicultural Center at the University of Cincinnati, the Black Cultural Resource Center. And then from there, went to Alabama A&M, where I directed student activities and leadership development for a few years. But a lot of my career has really just been based on the student experience and really trying to understand what it is that students want and what students need from professionals, and really making sure that the staff that I supervise and manage are well equipped to kind of handle the students in such a way that they can have this great, robust experience. So when I left Alabama A&M, I became the assistant dean of students at Bowling Green State University. I've been a lot of places, as young as I look, I've been a lot of places, but I was at Bowling Green. I was assistant dean there. And then right before I came here, I was the dean of students and a senior associate vice president for student affairs at Delaware State University in the booming metropolis of Dover, Delaware. So I was there for about 7 years and really dug into supervision and leadership and belonging, inclusion, all those types of things. And so, but I consider myself to be a well-rounded student affairs professional. I've worked in a lot of different areas and really have been able to unpack the student experience from a professional standpoint and really been able to use that knowledge or use those knowledges to be able to support staff as they continue to work and support students. And so that's kind of how I landed here.
Okay, so that is Jasmine, the professional. I'm talking about Jazz, the little girl. Where are you from? Tell us about that as well.
Sure.
We want to know who you are. And, was this something, how did you gravitate to this line of work?
Got it. No, sure. So I'm originally from Dayton, Ohio, born in Detroit, Michigan, raised in Dayton. My parents say I can't represent Michigan that hard because I only lived there until I was 4 years old. So they say I have to say I'm from Ohio. So I'm from Ohio. But I went to school. When I was in undergrad, I was really involved. And so I am in a sorority. I was on an advisory board. I was a resident assistant. I was a test reader. And so I really loved being in college, and I never left. And I just had a great mentor, Mr. Steve Ransom, who was down at Prairie View A&M now, I believe. Actually, he might have retired, but he really talked to me a lot about higher education. And so a lot of folks in higher ed, we don't know that higher ed positions exist until we get to college. And so I was able to just kind of have a conversation and I thought I was going to go to law school. And I was like, no, I just went home, I graduated, took a really long nap. And I was like, no, we're not going to do law school. That's not going to be for me. And I got into a graduate program. But I felt like I always had good people to talk to. I always had good students to be around. And so I just wanted students to have the same experience that I had. I had a great experience at Miami University, at Indiana State, at the University of Alabama, where I got my doctorate. I just really have had and loved the experiences that I've had. And when there have been times where it's like a little bit of a hiccup or some type of issue, I've always been surrounded by professionals and mentors who've been able to help me through those things and those challenges. My parents went to college. They both graduated, professional folks. And so college was something I had to do, right? And so it wasn't a thought. Like, it wasn't, are you going to college? It's where you're going to go. And I think that's the story for a lot of Black folks, right? Black folks that are come from educated folks or from those that are first generation. It's just this idea, like, education is the passport to the future. Nikki Giovanni, Malcolm X said that, right? So we need it, right? And so when something is taken from you, from historically, like, taken from us not being able to be educated, having to get degrees, we must get degrees, we must be educated. And so that's always in the back of my mind, is to be an example, right? And so I think even in my dissertation, I feel like my acknowledgments, it was like, this is for Black women, it's for Black girls, right, who thought about things, right? And so I want to be that person no matter what campus I'm a part of. And so it's just been really important to me to help students have a great college experience, and to be heard and be able to live out loud. And then for also the staff, right, to be able to have a good experience as well. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Our staff can't give the students what they need if they're not getting what they need as well. And so it's important for me, it has been important for me to kind of build those staff relationships as well. Those communications across campus is really important. So that's how I got here.
You're listening to UWO Now. I'm your host, Wendell Ray. And today we're talking with Dr. Jasmine Buxton, who is the Associate Vice Chancellor and Dean of Students at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. Dr. Buxton, you talked about your student experience being very positive. How has that shaped what you do as a professional now, where you now impact student experience?
I mean, I think that it's although the experiences aren't the exact same, but there's really nothing new under the sun. Students come to college, they want a degree, they want to have fun, they want to be on a path to a great career, they want to make money, they want to return on their investment. Nothing has changed. It's just the world around us has changed a little bit. And so my experience as an undergrad, like I was saying before, like, I want students to have a good experience while they're here, and I want them to feel heard and be seen. And so I have appreciated how we've moved out of just simply multicultural education and diversity, equity, inclusion, and we've really dug into the work of inclusion. We've really dug into the work of women's centers and gender equity and all those types of things. And I think that's important to kind of shift the landscape as it relates to how students are developed and how they grow and how they develop the sense of belonging. I think being here in Oshkosh, I think students have a lot that they're bringing to campuses, any campus, not just here, but students are bringing a lot with them. They're unpacking a lot of things. I think it's just really important for us to kind of be this supportive function for them, these supportive people for them. I am heartened by the ways in which campus culture is shifting across the nation. There are a lot of things happening in different parts of the country that could be relatively negative. Kind of depends on, where you land on what side of the aisle. But I think that the core of it is that we're here to support student learning and here to support student growth. And that's important.
Now, what in your job then, what new things, what new experiences, what new services, what new needs are you trying to address? Compared to when you were in school, what definite services are now available that were not available? I'm thinking when I know there is an emphasis now on mental health services and so forth and so on. Yeah. We know that campus security now is something that is at the forefront of a lot of thought on campuses. So what specifically are you doing to address needs of students now?
Sure. I think the services can be relatively the same, but how we approach them that's where the innovation lies. So I'll have to give a shout out to Leah Folks, who's our director of our counseling center, they do group and individual counseling. They have a yoga studio in there in that area. They have a quiet room. There's just so much. I think counseling has always existed on college campuses, for the most part. There's always been someone like a school psychologist, someone to talk to. And then most campuses have like these memorandums of understanding. They can go into the community and find something. But it seems like we are trying to be innovative in what services we offer and provide. And so what we do here at University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh is really important because I think we're really trying to meet students where they are. That's the core of our work. Where are you and what can we do to support you? What can we do to help you achieve your goals? So what Lee is doing in her office and area is really important for students when we think about mental health and awareness and counseling and all those types of things. What she's doing is really innovative. We have Mantra. We have you. Mantra is a Mantra Health. There's something across the system, the University of Wisconsin system, and other institutions across campus across the country, where students are able to sign up, find a therapist or a mental health care provider. They can select it on their own, and so I think that's important. So if there's something that our offices can't provide, then Mantra Health or BU and all these other different types of apps. And so I think the ability for a university to be agile in what they provide and not just leaving it to this director or this coordinator, this counselor in this specific area is really important. When we think about other things, when we think about our students who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and we think about those who we want folks to be allies and be able to pull up their level of understanding and knowledge about these specific populations and how we can be supportive of them. And so I think that gender and equity, that particular office and area, those are things that existed, but just in a smaller way when I was an undergrad, right? So we had a multicultural center. And I think when I was leaving University of Cincinnati, they were opening a women's center. But I think a lot of those things have evolved. It was women's when it was WOMENS and not WOMYNS, right? Or it was the GBLT, not the LGBT, right? So there's just so many ways. I think that pronouns matter. Like every email that you see, business cards, they have your pronouns, he, him, hers, they, them, theirs, these, them, there, all those types of things. Like those things existed, but just didn't exist in the same way. And it just seems like we, as a campus community, as a college community, higher education community, we're more willing to have the conversation. We're more willing to bring students to kind of say, help us kind of figure out the best ways to provide the best type of service and care. Because at the core, students are here to get a degree and to build a career path. If they have fun, that's a bonus. If college was supposed to be fun, it'd be called fun. It's not, right? It's college. You're here to learn.
That's right.
Produce new knowledge. But there's a lot of things that happen along the way. And so we really want to be able to be supportive of that, of all student populations. And the best way we can do that is be as open and affirming as possible.
So, Dr. Buxton, we're talking about these new students or today's student. Yeah. And there are services and they have to use them and reach out to them and be aware of them. And you're doing all you can to make sure the students are aware of them. And but, there are successes and there are failures. And one of the primary goals of any institution, not just here at UWO, but any higher education institution, is to retain the students who enroll.
Yeah. No, it's tough. I think that retention and issues around retention have been salient across all universities, right? Especially after COVID. I think that what we have understood during COVID was that we can deliver services in a different way. I was really nervous at my previous institution when we were going through COVID because student affairs is such a high touch experience, right? Like we need to be in your face. We're doing the programs, we're doing things in person. I just didn't think we read online, but we actually did, right? And we were successful there. But I think that in how our academic partners, how they deliver classes and coursework has changed and shifted. But I think that over that time, students have become, they have disassociated success and things with the college degree, right? And so we think about YouTube and social media and these YouTube stars and TikTok and all that. Do I need to go to college to be this? So when I was in school, I don't need college to be a rapper. I don't need college to start my own business. And I would always, as a person who's always loved education, I always loved to read. My sister taught me how to read when I was like 2, so she was 3 years older than me. And so I've always loved education. So I'm like, yeah, you can get a business degree. And so you'll be even better at the music station, all the types of things. And so I think that our students during COVID were really thinking about, like, do I really need this? It's a lot. Like, college costs a lot of money. And it really is a big financial investment. And they need a return on that. And so when you have a major that may not get you $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, does it become worth it to you? And so we are looking at retention from a different space. It used to just be, yes, you can live in this particular residence hall, you have this access to these things. And now we're convincing students that college is really still important for them. We're convincing students that the university experience is more than just having fun or whatever, because like, well, I can have fun anywhere. Like, well, no, like it's a different type of fun, a different level of friendship, a different level of growth. There's internships, there's jobs that are available, careers, but then also relationships. And so being able to get involved in student government and involved in fraternity and sorority life, all those types of things. And so we think about retention, we're thinking about things in this wraparound way. And so I think that our colleagues here have a heavy lift of convincing students that college is still the passport to a better future, better and brighter future, but then also that it's worth it to them to invest in themselves for these 4 years or 4.5 or 5 years. And then when we think about retention for students of color or for students from marginalized populations, even more so, right? So we have a lot of students that have to stop out. Like, I have this going on at home. I can't afford this. The books are this. I can get there, but I can get to school, but my car may have broken down, or I can get to school, but I don't have this particular book. Like, there's always something. And the level of support that our marginalized population students have can be diminished and can be minimal comparatively to some of our majority students. I think it's important to kind of unpack that and really being able to advocate for them in new ways. That's kind of what we do in the that's what we do in the Dean of Students Office for all students.
Culturally, how do you try and impact those students who are in a space now where their difference is magnified, or could be, at least, depending on where they come from? So how do you help them in those areas?
Yeah, I think the key is, one, being visible, like being visually letting students know like what we have available, making sure we're walking around campus and getting to know students, make sure we're being present at different things. So we have it's Black History Month right now, so making sure we're attending different events, because a lot of it is about introducing yourself to students so that they know who you are. The majority of my conversations with students here and at other places really have nothing to do with my office, right? It's about this particular person is bothering me, or I don't know what to do with this particular feeling, or I don't like this is happening. I'm having this issue at home. So it's a lot of stuff, right? And so we're not just talking to students. The Dean of Students Office can be such a daunting place because it can feel like the principal's office. But if they really came in and understand, we're about care, we're about accessibility, we're about helping students find accommodation if they have a learning disability. There's a lot of things that we offer in our office and across the Division of Student Affairs in general. I think Erin Gresham, our Vice Chancellor, has done a great job of really creating opportunities for staff to really get out there and grab the attention of students and really modify and create new services and new initiatives for students to really feel like they belong here. And so retention is about belonging. So when you think about belonging, a lot of things have to be in place for students to feel like they belong somewhere, right? They have to have a core friendship group. The racial climate on campus has to be appropriate. They have to be in good relationship with their faculty and staff. They have to have a good social thing going on. And so when it's snowing, when it's cold, when there's not a lot of people that look like you outside of your room or wherever, it can be a little bit daunting, a little bit challenging. I have to do all this, navigate this space of looking like the only, and go to class and get A's and not waste my money, right? Not waste, my parents' money or whatever. Yeah. And then all the things, the challenges of like working off campus or having family. So it's a lot of things. And what our responsibility, especially in student affairs, I think across campus with all of our colleagues, is to know that our students are coming with way more than just, I don't know how to do this particular assignment. Like, it's a lot of other things, right? It's deeper than that, right? And I trust and I know that from our chancellor to our custodians to our staff members, whomever, like, I know everyone is on the same page in terms of wanting students to be successful. And we have to know and understand they're bringing a lot more to them than just, I don't know how to do this, or there's a lot more that we can be helpful and offer to our students. And so we have to kind of be clear about that, because that is how we develop a good retention model, right? Having this wraparound care and service.
Okay, I was going to kind of ask you, you're relatively new here at UWO, but you have a lot of experience at other places. Yeah. What, typically speaking, when you're talking about those students of color, African-American students specifically, what I'm talking about, and maybe in other groups who go to a campus, predominantly white campus, and then leave. What are some of those reasons that you have found? Are there commonalities around in the different universities you've been, and what are some of those common reasons that students decide to leave?
Finances, purpose, is it really worth it? And then a social, not really having like a social connection. A lot of students...
Now, that's interesting, that social connection.
Yeah.
I guess you can't force social connection. How do you facilitate it?
So a lot of campuses, at least the campus that I worked for, and even here, like that's why they have these programs and initiatives that are around specific affinity groups or around specific population of students. So we think about the work Dr. Carlos Salazar is doing over in ASIE. We think about the work that Kaylee is doing over in TRIO programs. We think about the work that Maria Fletcher's doing with TAP. So we think about all these ways, these pockets in which we can engage populations of students to introduce them, right? So we think about bridge programs, we think about Black student welcomes, all those types of things are ways in which we're just here to drop nuggets. Like a student out the gate is not going to come straight to ASIE, or they're going to go straight to the dean's of students office, but we are present at new student orientation, and we're at different games and different things like that, open houses. And so we want them to be familiar with us, right? So it's like, oh, I think I remember you. So that when they are in crisis, think about, like, didn't I meet someone a few months ago that could say that kind of thing? That's what we rely on. When students of color at predominantly white institutions or majority institutions, when they leave, it's not always because they can't do the work, right? It's a finance thing. Is this work that there's so much happening at home that I can't, like, I just can't, it's too much. Like, I have to work off campus, like I'm driving back and forth, I have to pick someone else up, my car broke, it's a lot of other things. But most of the time when students come, they're there to succeed. They could be the first in their family, first generation students. It's a lot because they have a lot on it's a lot of pressure as well. And so it's just a lot on their shoulders. They really want to achieve, they really want to accomplish something. And so.
And is that much different than when Jasmine Buxton was not Dr. Jasmine Buxton, but was an undergrad? Are those issues basically the same? But as you mentioned earlier, is the approach any different? And are there nuances there, or how do you approach it? I mean, when you were active, as you said you were as an undergrad, and the services and programs and connections that you made as an undergrad were there and available for you. Are you using that as a model when you are in all the different positions you've been in, and now you're here at UWO? And if so, is it the same kind of model, or are you adjusting it? And if so, how?
Sure. What I know to be true about my undergraduate experience is that resources are there. What I know to be true is that I was part of, it wasn't a bridge program, but it was called Minority Professional Leadership Program. And so we went to Miami University for a week in the summer before our senior year. We met a lot of people. We went to a couple of classes, we went to lunch, all that kind of stuff, kind of cohort model. It was about 100 of us. And that was a program that, similar to Bridge, but it was a program that lasted, I want to say it had several classes. I'm not sure if it's still there, but MPLP. So a lot of us that went to MPLP,
which is?
Minority Professional Leadership Program.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of us that came out of MPLP applied to Miami when we got in. And so my college roommate, Tanya Dawson, my sorority sister, we were in MPLP together. We weren't necessarily friends there. I remember her, and we just happened to be at Miami University orientation registration the same day. We're like, let's be roommates. Like, I'm gonna be in this hall. Like, let's do it. Because we're looking around like, I know you. I'm familiar enough with you. And so that's the experience. So when I think it can't be that much different any other school, right? If it's a non-HBCU. So it has to be the same. And so in terms of, you want to find people who look like you, and you want to be able to, you're going to have to reach out, like your social network is going to expand beyond, your neighbor and all those things. But you got to have some core friends. So that social connection is really important. So because I was an MPLP, and because I joined the Center for Black Culture and Learning, and I was a mentee, I did all those things. I was very connected in that way as an undergrad. And that, after that, then I joined Black Student Action Association, and then I became a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Lambda Mu chapter. Thank you very much. I became a sorority member, and from sorority member, I was the president of MPAC, and president of MPAC, I was on the Dean's Advisory Board, and so I was an RA. So that everything, my entrance into being active on campus started with MPLP. And so after MPLP, then it's like, okay, I met these people, and so we're in a residence hall, we were in a learning community. And so it was just a lot. And so I think that if we are able to put those same systems in place for students here and anywhere, then they can be successful. At least we're starting it off, right? We're kind of laying the foreground for them to be successful. That's why bridge programs, that's why the work that is, when we're talking specifically about students of color, that's why the work that Byron is doing over in ASIE, that's why it's really, really important, and his entire staff, because that's the starting point for a lot of students of color. And so they may not be as active and engaged and involved. I was a mentee. I think I was a mentor my second year, but my third and fourth year, I was doing other things. But that's kind of what we need. But I was doing other things. So I was visible to other young students as they were coming to campus, right? And so it's like this cycle effect. And so what I hope, I've only been here at Oshkosh for a couple of weeks, maybe 3 by the end of this week, 3 weeks, but I'm hopeful that the students of color here have that same level of connection and that same level of understanding of who they are and why they're here, and that we are Sankofa. You have to reach back, right? And so I'm hopeful that the principles of Sankofa and this principle of like being able to transition and kind of be this mentor, this whatever, that they're doing that. I think of myself as a model mentor no matter what, wherever I am, right? That's why I have my AK bag on all the time. I try to dress nice, all that kind of stuff, because you're trying to be, when students see me, I want them to see like, okay, I can be like that. And that's any student, not just students of color, but like, well, who is that? Who is she? That kind of thing. And so it's just important for us to kind of be an example, but not in such a way that's crushing to who we are, but it's authentic to us. This is my genuine love and affection for student and the student experience.
So what were the things here at UWO that you saw that made you want to leave Delaware and come to Wisconsin, come to Oshkosh, Wisconsin? What brought you to us?
Sure. The experience. So when I interviewed and was brought to campus, I met so many good people, right? And so I sensed through Erin Grisham that she wanted to make some changes and adjustments in student affairs. And I can see that she wanted to make, and we've talked about this candidly, that she wanted to be a very student affairs-y type of division. And so my experiences just really were in alignment. It's just kind of all lined up. What she wants to do, what I've been able to do, what I want to do, what I'm willing to do. And so it just kind of all lined up. When I got here, I met so many good people, and I was like, I want to work with you, right? And so I'm all, the good thing about student affairs, and kind of the bad thing, is that like in order to get new experiences, you have to move on. You got to go somewhere else. So I've worked at a lot of different places, but I've gotten so much from those spaces and being in those places, being around those people in that particular state at that particular time, getting this particular, it just all kind of led me to this, like, I can do this here. Right. And so I just think everything was just in alignment. And the people here are good. I think there are good bones here. There's good flesh here. And so I just was excited about that. And I had a student session with a couple of students, and I actually saw one of the students last night at an OSA meeting, and it was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in so long. I was like, but I think it's just like this, I want to be as helpful to students as possible, and I want to be as helpful to staff as possible. Belonging is a thing for me, and it's belonging for staff and belonging for students, right? And so outside of the cheese curds and all the other things that Wisconsin is known for, and the big water and the lakes and all those things, like, it's just there's a family spirit here. And I think there's this enveloping of like just kind of good-natured, good-hearted people. And so I just kind of want to be able to be a part of that, and I want to be able to push those things forward, and I want to be supportive.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so what do you want student affairs, your office, the things that you're in charge of, what do you want that to look like, and what do you want your legacy here to be? What have you thought about the goals that you have, and what you want to, how you want to shape things and make an impact?
Sure. I want student affairs to be what student affairs is supposed to be. I think that a lot of times student affairs becomes, in my experience, student affairs becomes either the catch-all or we combine it with something else, because it can sometimes become the stepchild of university leadership. But student affairs is such an important part of the student experience. In some places, we're everything but academics. Mm-hmm. In some areas, we have athletics under us, and some there's enrollment, all those things. And so where we are right now, we're poised at University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh to be a great division. It's already great, but I think we're poised to really think creatively and have some thought leadership around what's coming next for our students and how we can best support them through positions, through initiatives, through programs, through activities, through support, and through that engagement among staff and across the campus. Like, I know, and I was just on a call earlier, in a meeting earlier today, like, I know everyone here wants our students to be successful. And so I just want, my legacy here is just that student success, right? And so I'm not tied to this. I want people at UW Oshkosh to remember me this way. Like, just know when you see my name on an email, respond. When you see that, this student affairs, like, attend, because it's well thought out. It's well researched. We really, it's thoughtful. Like, the things that we're doing are thoughtful. And so the people that we have in our camp, in our division, are thoughtful leadership, right? It's thoughtful leaders. And so I want I want folks to know that we are here to support the students, and anything that they need, we want to make sure that we can kind of help them figure out and facilitate.
How do you figure out what it is that students want and need? How do you stay on top of that? What is the mechanism that you use to find out what students are interested in, need, want?
Very simply, talking to students, right? So important is to be engaged, right? To have conversation with students when you're walking through the union, having conversation. We also do that through signature programs like student government, fraternity sorority life, programming board, our accessibility team. Like, so we touch students through so many different parts of their life here, that it's easy to kind of understand like where they are. On top of that, we do research, right? So we have national organizations like NASPA, ACPA, ACUHO, where we're talking about housing issues. We're talking about all the things at a larger scale. It's about building relationships across campuses with other deans, other AVCs, about what's happening there to kind of come up with this idea. When I'm in meetings with other folks, everyone's talking the same stuff. Students, we need to retain them. We want them to be excited to be here. We want them to see the college is an important part of their life. We want them to get a return on their investment. That's the conversation around the table. And so everyone is speaking the same language, and it had to come from somewhere. But a lot of us, because our touch, the touch is this high touch thing I was saying about student affairs, this high touch experiences that we're having with students across our programs as we advise them, as they're coming to our centers just to hang out, just to chill, those types of things, and just having conversation. I think what my challenge will be here is really getting to know the students as much as possible. I think when you're working at a smaller institution, I see the same 500 students all the time, right? We have, at my previous institution, about 5,600 students, about 2,500 live on campus. And so you kind of see those students, you kind of know this is just a broader space. And it's cold. Like, it's not that cold in Delaware right now. It's cold. Students are bundled up. They're in their rooms. We're post-COVID. They're all in their
Only
phone.
out when they need to be.
Right, when they need to be. They're here for a cookie, a sandwich is on my mouth, And so we have to just that goes back to like meeting students where they are. And so I think that it's all encompassing, all involved. And so we don't have the benefit of seeing students for 50 minutes or an hour a day in a class. So we can see, but our benefit is that we see them after 4:00. We see them in the evening at the comedian. We see them in Titan Underground. We see them in different spaces, and really wanting them to feel comfortable to talk to us, and just talk to us and share with some things, whether they're in crisis or not, or just have
you found that to be so far, that
so
students
far,
are
so
engaging?
good. Yeah, so far so good. Like, I think it's like, why is she asking me? I'm like, hey, what's your name? I think they're like, why is she talking to me? So I think it's that. But I think after a while, they'll kind of see, like, I'm not the weird lady over in, right? Like, why are you asking me that? Like, she the feds? You know what I mean? She the police. But no. So I think I have found students to be relatively open and affirming here, and so I attribute that to the relationships they have with folks on campus anyway.
Well, good luck to you, and thanks so much for coming by and talking to us. It's really been good meeting you, getting an opportunity to talk to you and understand what it is that you're charged with doing and some of the goals that you have. So thanks so much for coming by and talking to us today.
Sure.
On UWO Now. It's been great.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right. That's all the time we're going to have here today on UWO Now. Thanks so much for checking us out. Remember to catch the latest episode of UWO Now on our website. That's WRST.org, and podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Podcast, Google Podcast, and of course you can watch us on the UWO YouTube page. I'm Wendell Ray. Thanks so much for listening.